Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, the architecture of human decision making. But right off the bat, I want to ask you a direct question. Think about your work, your everyday life. Are you smart? Are you intelligent? Or are you truly wise? We throw those three words around interchangeably all the time, but as we're going to see, they actually lead to drastically different outcomes. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture three employees. Suddenly, the boss walks in and drops a massive presentation deadline for that very same day. So how do they react? Well, the smart employee, they just instantly crack open their laptop. They know all the shortcuts, they throw in some flashy edits, getting it done super fast just to look efficient. Then you've got the intelligent employee. They take a breath, dive deep into research, find the absolute perfect data, and build this incredibly thoughtful, heavy presentation. But the wise employee, they pause. They go right back to the boss and ask, hey, why exactly are we doing this presentation today? What's the actual goal here? See, they figure out the expectation before doing a single ounce of work. It's wild, right? They're all using their brains in completely different ways. And to figure out why, we actually need to test your brain right now. All right, listen to this quick scenario. A bat and a ball cost 110 taka in total. The bat costs exactly 100 taka more than the ball. So how much does the ball cost? Go ahead, do it in your head. I'll give you a second. Did your brain just scream 10 taka? It's okay. Honestly, almost everyone's does. But the correct answer is actually 5 taka. No way, right? If you guessed 10, seriously, don't sweat it. You aren't bad at math. Your mind was literally just tricked by its own built-in autopilot. It just took the absolute path of least resistance. Let's quickly break down the actual math here. If the ball is x, then the bat is x plus 100. Together, they equal 110. So 2x plus 100 equals 110. Subtract the 100, you're left with 2x equals 10. Divide by 2, and bam, x is 5. So the crucial point is that your brain naturally just skips right over this slow step-by-step logic. But why? Well, because thinking hard takes actual physical energy. And frankly, your brain is incredibly lazy. It just wants to save energy at absolutely all costs. And this brings us to the really groundbreaking work of Nobel laureate psychologist Daniel Kahneman. He basically spent his entire life trying to answer one massive question: why do humans make such terrible decisions? And what he discovered is just absolutely mind-blowing. He figured out that our brain doesn't just have one single way of thinking. It actually has two entirely different operating systems. And get this, they are constantly at war, fighting for control over your actions. So let's break down how these two systems compare. System 1 is your autopilot. It's fast, it's automatic, it runs on pure emotion, and it is completely effortless. Like, it reacts before you even consciously realize it. But then you have System 2. System 2 is your manual mode. It's slow, it requires conscious, deliberate focus, it relies strictly on logic, and it drains a massive amount of your body's energy to use. And this brilliantly illustrates the crazy reality of our daily lives. A staggering 95% of the decisions you make every single day are driven by System 1, that lazy, emotional autopilot. Only a tiny, almost microscopic 5% of your decisions actually tap into System 2's deep logic. Now, don't get me wrong, System 1 isn't a bad thing. We literally need it to survive. Just think about what triggers it so effortlessly. Jumping back when a dog barks, instantly smiling when you spot a friend in a crowd, craving a piece of chocolate the second you see it sitting on the table, or feeling that immediate flash of anger when someone says something you completely disagree with. Honestly, life would be impossibly slow, just unbearable really, if we had to logically calculate every single one of those split-second reactions. But then we get to the heavy lifting. System 2 gets triggered when you try to calculate, say, 17 multiplied by 24 in your head. It fires up when you force yourself to read the tiny, fine print terms of a contract, when you actively have to hold back your anger during a frustrating meeting, or when you sit down to map out a 5-year career plan. The catch is, your brain actively tries to avoid these tasks because, like we said, they totally drain your battery. So, because our brain defaults to System 1 for 95% of our lives just to save energy, it relies heavily on shortcuts. It recognizes a pattern and, boom, jumps right to a conclusion. But here is the major trap. These shortcuts are often dangerously wrong. In psychology, these little energy-saving shortcuts are known as cognitive biases. Let's dig into how they might be secretly controlling you right now. First up is the availability heuristic. This is the bias where System 1 basically tells you, hey, if I can remember it easily, it must be the absolute truth. So for example, say you watch a super dramatic news story about a plane crash. Suddenly, you're absolutely terrified to fly, convinced it's highly dangerous. But meanwhile, you're texting and driving your car every single day, which statistically is far, far more lethal. But because everyday car crashes aren't spectacular, primetime news, your autopilot just completely ignores the real risk. Next up, we've got confirmation bias. This is essentially System 1 whispering in your ear, I'm right, now just go find the proof. Think about it. If you dislike someone, your brain will effortlessly spot every single tiny mistake they make. But if you really like someone, your brain will completely blind you to those exact same flaws. You literally only see the evidence that confirms what you already feel. Then there's the anchoring bias. This happens when the very first piece of information you get heavily influences your final choice. Just imagine walking into a store and seeing a tag that says, was 5,000 taka, now 2,500 taka. System 1 instantly fires up and thinks, wow, what a massive bargain, purely because it anchored itself to that 5,000 number. In reality, the item might really only be worth 1,000, but that initial number completely hijacked your entire perception of value. Now, this one is just fascinating. Loss aversion. Your brain is hardwired so that the psychological pain of losing 1,000 taka is actually twice as powerful as the joy of finding 1,000 taka. System 1 is practically screaming at you to avoid danger at all costs. And because of this, people tend to play it incredibly safe. They miss out on some truly amazing life and career opportunities simply out of this irrational fear of losing what little they already have. And you really have to beware of the halo effect. This is a shortcut that assumes if someone has one good quality, well, all their other qualities must be good too. It's exactly why we subconsciously assume that highly attractive people are automatically intelligent, or why we think a super confident speaker is an absolute expert, even if they have literally no idea what they're talking about. System 1 just says, hey, good in one area definitely means good everywhere. So how do we actually fight back against all this? Well, you've got to know when you're most vulnerable. During the daytime, System 2 is well-rested. You're sharp, you can make logical choices. But as the day drags on, decision fatigue starts setting in. By nighttime, System 2 is completely exhausted and essentially shuts down, letting System 1 take total control. This is exactly why you give in to those junk food cravings late at night, or why you end up sending those highly emotional, totally regretful text messages at 2 a.m. Your logical brain is quite literally asleep at the wheel. Let's move to and see how this builds into a real framework for better thinking. Here are 4 highly actionable ways to force your System 2 to wake up. First, simply stop and pause. Literally just say the words, let me think about it. That tiny little delay forces the autopilot to switch off. Second, ask yourself challenging questions like, wait, am I being biased right now? Third, sleep on big decisions. Remember, System 2 is at its absolute strongest in the morning. And fourth, write it down. Keeping things jumbled in your head just lets System 1 play emotional games with you. Getting it out on paper forces System 2 to logically structure the whole argument. And actually, this is exactly what the wise employee did in our very first story. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is it brings us to a deeply humbling realization. As the saying goes, you think you are taking all decisions consciously. In reality, System 1 is making the decisions, and you are just arranging the logic later. We honestly spend so much time justifying our emotional impulses and just calling it logic. And you know what? It's not a flaw. It's simply what makes us human. But once you finally understand how the machinery actually works, you can finally step up and take control. So I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought to carry with you today. Take a hard look at your life today. Which decision did your fast, highly emotional System 1 take today that your slow, calculated System 2 really should have taken? Really think about it. Slow down, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.